This is Candy with eyes2jesus.blogspot.com. And given the current world situation, today's date is April 6th, 2020. A lot of people, pretty much everybody now, is trapped in their homes. And so a lot of us are using our food stocks, rotating our food stocks, replenishing them when possible. With limited supplies in grocery stores, a lot of people are having to change how they eat or what they eat. And there's a lot of people who don't know how to cook that are now being forced to learn how to cook because they need to stay at home. What I'm going to show you today is a supper that I'm making today. So I thought I would turn on the camera and share this with you. This is a very cheap supper to make. It's made from food stock that a lot of people already have stocked up in their pantry or on hand, and it is healthy and it's really good. This really cheap supper is actually one of the favorites of my family. We all love this supper. Now, this is not a really heavy, hearty supper, which is often a good idea, especially if you're going to have a bit of a later supper. But it is filling, and it is nutritious, and it is easy, simple, cheap, and like I said, it's an easy supper to do off of food stock. And so what I'm making today is split peas and biscuits. So I just grabbed one of my jars of split peas, and I just have this setting off to the side right now. On my stove to my right, I have my big Dutch oven pot. You can just do just a regular big pot is fine. And I just have it filled up with water. I didn't measure it. Measurements don't matter. And I put on the lid, and I have it sitting on the burner on high. And right now, I'm just waiting for the water to boil. So in a few minutes, when that water boils, I'll show you what I do next. It's really simple. And now that the water is boiling, we'll move on to the next step. Now, I like to take grapeseed oil, or if I'm out of grapeseed oil, because my store is out of it, I got some flaxseed oil, but I still have some grapeseed oil, so I'm going to use that up. So take some grapeseed oil or flaxseed oil, and you just want to pour some into the boiling water. Again, just not measuring. The reason is this will help prevent your split peas from boiling or foaming over, and it'll help it not get so foamy. I do this when cooking rice and pasta as well. So if you don't want your pot to boil over, just pour in some grapeseed oil. Alright, next, I'm going to add some dried split peas. And again, it's just however much you want to make. I'm guessing I'm going to put in maybe 2.5 cups. Now I'm just going to grab a spoon and give this a stir so things aren't going to be sticking to my Dutch oven here, which shouldn't be much of a problem. And then I'm just going to let this stay at a high boil. And I'm just going to come in and stir it about every 10 minutes or so. And when it seems like it's getting close, then I'll start checking it every 5 minutes. This uses up a lot of water. You might need to add more water before it's done. And you'll know when it's done when the split peas start splitting open. When you start stirring it and you lift your spoon and you look at the peas and you see that a whole bunch of them are split open, then it's done. This is what I'm looking for to see when they are done. I now have this removed from the heat. Didn't drain it, not going to drain it. I'm going to leave it as is with moisture-wise. And I just set my oven preheating to 450 degrees for the biscuits. So while I'm waiting for that to preheat, I'm going to finish up the split peas and get the biscuit dough or batter mixed together. So for the split peas, very simple. Take some sea salt, and I like to do with sea salt about a teaspoon per cup. So I have 2.5 cups in here, so that's 2.5 teaspoons of sea salt. If you're using regular iodized table salt, then I suggest you would go with maybe more of a 1/2 teaspoon to 3/4 of a teaspoon per cup. So either way, if you don't make this regularly, then make sure you add salt and taste a bit, and then go with taste. So, but I already know that 2.5 teaspoons of sea salt for 2.5 cups of split peas is what seems to work for us. And then just some ground black pepper. I just sprinkle it in until it looks good to me. I'm going to give it a mix. And guess what? The peas are done. It's not this massively tricky thing. I will serve it up as a simple basic type of split pea soup in a bowl, and it tastes good. You just need the peas and the water and the salt and the pepper, and it's delicious. That's all you need. So now I'm just going to set this off to the side, and I'm going to get a bowl and a nice mixing spoon, and I'm going to mix together that biscuit batter. So in my mixing bowl, I put in 2 cups of flour. You can use a flour of your choice or whatever you have. Today I'm just doing 2 cups of unbleached all-purpose flour. And then to that, I added a couple tablespoons of pure raw honey. Alright, now to that, I'm going to put in 3 teaspoons of baking powder. And then about 1/2 to 3/4 of a teaspoon of sea salt. And then a 1/2 stick of butter. And I'm going to grab a tablespoon, and I am just going to mix this together before I add anything else. I got this mixed together. It should be dry and clumpy and crumbly. So now we're going to add our last ingredient, which is 1 cup of milk. Now I'm going to get this mixed together, and it's going to give me a wet, sticky batter. I'm going to mix it together, and you have this kind of thick, wet, sticky batter. What I'm going to do now is I am going to reach into my cabinet, and I'm going to grab a cookie sheet. Now do not grease or butter or spray the cookie sheet. Leave it as is. I'm going to grab a butter knife, and then using this tablespoon, I'm just going to use the butter knife to help me scrape out heaping tablespoons full of the biscuit batter onto the cookie sheet. So this will give me, depending on the size of biscuits, roughly between 11 and 13 biscuits dished out on that cookie sheet. And here we go. I have 12 on the cookie sheet. Now my oven is finished heating up. As I said earlier, I preheated it to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm going to pop these into the oven for 8 minutes, and then the biscuits will be done. And with the biscuits fresh out of the oven, it is now time to dish out supper. And supper is served. Start to finish, this supper took a little bit under an hour.